With so many big titles getting pushed to 2010, Final Fantasy XIII is kind of early in the year, but this is a really, really big RPG.
Right. Actually, it was kind of pushed to like 2008 and then to 2009. Yeah, it's kind of been a long time coming, but I feel like it's still a pretty big game, although of course expectations are through the roof. So I don't know how people are going to react to it, because it takes a pretty different approach to the Final Fantasy series, especially compared to Final Fantasy XII.
Time to end it! Take this!
It started out as a PS2 game, but it doesn't really look like a PS2 game anymore.
I mean, theoretically, I think because Final Fantasy XII took so long to develop, I mean, that was in development for like 5 years, that eventually they realized it wasn't feasible or economical or realistic to make 13 a PS2 game also, so they pushed it to PS3, and then that, I think, slowed down development because they took forever creating the engine for it, and so it's just been this kind of rolling disaster as we've moved into this generation. I think a lot of publishers and developers have had the same problem.
The voice acting, I think, is also really top-notch for one of these titles. You kind of expect a JRPG like Star Ocean, some other titles, to have kind of sketchy voice acting.
Square applies a lot of money and a lot of talent to its biggest titles. So I don't think the quality of voice acting was ever too big a surprise. And there are some characters who kind of grate on me. But there are characters in English, in the English version, that I actually like more than their Japanese counterparts, which is not usually that common in translated games. But yeah, they've done a good job with the characters. There's a certain self-awareness to the dialogue and the script. It's like the writers know what RPG cliches are, and when the plot starts to veer in that direction, the characters will actually step back and say, well, that was kind of stupid, or that doesn't make sense, or I don't think we should do this. You know, they don't necessarily take the obvious path.
We can't relax just yet.
Right. We press on. I'll take point. You watch our backs.
Actually, why don't you let me take point?
Can you handle it?
It's not a question of can or can't.
Now you're learning.
It's definitely one of the best looking games that I've seen. A lot of people are going to say, you know, Bayonetta, that's the highlight of graphics for 2010, but Final Fantasy XIII, that is a good looking game.
It definitely has its own distinctive style. It looks very much like a modern Final Fantasy game. Like all Final Fantasy games have kind of had the same visual style since Final Fantasy VIII, which was more than 10 years ago, and this is just kind of iterating on that, but it's really gorgeous, especially when you get to some of the specialized animations, like when you summon Eidolons. Like, it's just amazing that they can pump out graphics like that. But of course, that's another reason why the game has been so long coming.
Cut us a path!
After we got through the NES era of Final Fantasy, each battle system has just been how you can structure combat. And Final Fantasy XII, I thought, did a really good job of putting you in control of one character and having the others controlled by gambits.
What you have is something called paradigms, which basically is a class system. You have 6 different roles that a character can fit into, and when a character is in that role, whether it's Commando, which is a straight-up attacker, or a Ravager, which is a black mage basically, or a medic, all they do is use skills from that one class. At any time in the battle, you're free to change up classes, and you shift everyone's class all at once. If your party isn't configured with the right paradigm at any given time, you're going to get wiped out.
everyone knows that this is going to be a really good RPG. And Final Fantasy XII is one of your favorite Final Fantasy RPGs.
I would say Final Fantasy XII is my favorite in the series.
Is Final Fantasy XIII a contender for that? Are they going to knock that off?
No, I mean, Final Fantasy XII is really designed for my peculiar tastes and my specific interests, and 13 is kind of its diametric opposite. But it's a really, really well-designed game, and I'm willing to take it on its own terms instead of, well, I want another Final Fantasy XII, because you never get another Final Fantasy that was just like the previous one. It's not a traditional RPG, but at the same time, it does, sort of like Mass Effect 2, in that it sort of redefines what an RPG can be and focuses on specific elements of what a role-playing game is, and really plays those up and just kind of swipes all the other things off the table instead of trying to include those things and doing them badly. Because the game really focuses on its story and its combat, the fact that they've managed to really do a good job with both of those things, in my opinion, that really justifies the overall game design. It's really well done.